I am joined right now with the man himself, Mr. Robin Black. So thank you very much for joining me. I will, of course, if you look in one of the corners of the screen, you'll see the link up for the breakdown of the Michael Bisping Dan Henderson bout at UFC 204. We are going to touch on the UFC 204 card. So firstly, welcome back, Mr. Black. Thank you so much for your time again.
Hey, thanks, man. It's good hanging with you. So I'm here at Fight Network, and we're right in between. We just shot some Fight News Now, and we're going to shoot the preview show for this weekend's card in Brazil.
In Brazil, I know, and I can't wait for that event. I'm going to be tuning in over here in the UK. I know the work you're doing, it's what fight fans need, and I do implore everyone to go to the Fight Network channel. If you can't get it where you are in the world, they do have a YouTube channel, and again, I will put the link up. It'll be somewhere on the screen when you're looking. So click that link, subscribe. They've got more than just just Robin Black talking about UFC 204. There's tons of content there to keep you entertained for hours on end, people. So yeah, Robin, let's go to this UFC 204 card. It's a pay-per-view event in the UK due to the fact that Michael Bisping shocked a lot of people by beating Luke Rockhold with that win. You didn't feel it was much of a shock, Joe. I think Luke Rockhold's, obviously, if we look back quickly, Luke Rockhold went in with too much confidence, did not appreciate what that man, Mr. Michael Bisping, is doing behind the scenes.
Yeah, and I mean, you could see it in the way Rockhold walked out. You could see it in the nonchalant way he was in the cage. For Bisping, that's irrelevant. Bisping's job is to be there and be in a state where he can perform at his best. And what he could never do, or any other fighter can never do, is assume you'll get a lesser opponent. So he comes in there expecting and prepared for the very best. Rockhold believing he can beat him, believing he can deal with whatever the scenario is that happens. Instead, he gets a lower level Rockhold because Rockhold did not do his job to the level that Mike did it, and Mike got him out of there. And that happens. We've seen that happen. Every fight is different. Going into it, Rockhold knocked Bisping down, hurt him bad, and choked him literally with one arm.
Yeah. That was insane watching that, yeah. And like Bisping said before the fight, he said every fight is different, and he definitely proved that. And look, he got himself into Manchester, a main event. Now, I was meant to watch Bisping fight at Manchester 3 years ago against Mark Munoz, and then he got the injury of his eye, and Lyoto Machida stepped in. So I missed out on watching Bisping fight in Manchester. So I'm made up. I'm going to this event now, and especially I get to watch, in my eyes, one of the all-time legends, Dan Henderson fight. I'm like a kid at Christmas getting to see this fight. But let's go to the main. Let's talk about the main card, my friend. The fight, I think, might go under the radar on the world scene in MMA, but for us European fans, these are two featherweights who have got huge futures and potentials. You've got Bektic, and Allen. So these two gentlemen stepping into the cage. I'm a little bit sad that the two of them are facing each other so early. I think Bektic is a great competitor. He puts on an immense amount of pressure. His grappling is what I feel could make a difference in this fight. But what's your thoughts on that fight itself?
Yeah, I know what you mean when you've got guys that are kind of younger and in this kind of state and in this kind of level. Bektic's never lost. He doesn't know how to lose yet. And he's an American kid. You get this feeling that he's got kind of that European style to the way that he moves and attacks, but he's tough. And you guys know Allen pretty well over in Europe, I think, right? You've seen him fight in England before. Yeah. But it's a tough one that the British fighters, traditionally, people used to believe do not have the level of wrestling, right? That was always what people would say. Yeah, it's not true anymore, right? Some of these apparent truths, people act like they're true forever, and they're not, because if you are a British wrestling coaches, if you're British fighters, if you're British teams, and you hear this, you sit around and go, oh, well, all the experts say that that our wrestling level is not at the level of the Americans or certain other areas of Europe or whatever. So Or do you go and immediately work on it, immediately study, immediately raise the coaching level, immediately raise the quality? Of course you do. So that is an area I always find lately that people will underestimate the wrestling of the British fighters, and I think that's something you could see in this fight too.
I think as well with Arnold Allen being at TriStar, quite a lot of his time spent there of late. For ours is, I wouldn't even say genius. That would be too small of a word to describe that man. I think a big key is for the British is learning how to defend the takedown. If you can stop the takedown, that's all that really matters. And Bisping showing that. I think Joanna Jędrzejczyk is showing that. That girl snuffs your takedown, and then that's it. Then you're in her world. And I think if Arnold Allen can at least minimize that, I think that will make a big difference because his boxing is very good. He's got very good boxing. And Bektic, his grappling is what I think might make the difference. So he is almost like a Khabib. He is relentless. Plus, the transitions he makes from double to single legs, and when he gets you down, the way he can manipulate locking your elbow to stop you posting and even stopping you getting up, it's a beautiful thing to watch. He makes you work to get back up. So he makes you exert so much more energy rather than use technique. A lot of people have to use power to get up. The Lucas Martins fight was a good example where he was just showed that he will make you work to get up. And I think that would be a big difference in this fight. I'm not saying Arnold Allen can't stop this fight with his hands. He certainly can. But this fight is a super interesting fight. So I think the pair of them are going to be contenders in that featherweight division in the next, say, 2 years. Give him at least 2 years' time to evolve.
We saw Allen in the training room at TriStar last time Rammer and I were there, and he looked very, very good. That it's not just the level of that his understanding would have raised in England. It is going over there, and every single day he's in wrestling rooms with higher and higher and higher caliber guys. And we have a tendency. It's the nature of how we try to categorize things. When we look to understand things, we assign certain labels to things. And takedown defense is a label that we've assigned over the last couple of years. And your example of Joanna Jędrzejczyk was a very good one because there is an old school element to the newer divisions in women. And she is she's Chuck Liddell. She literally will sprawl with a cross face, drive the face down, get up, and throw hard right hands. She's Chuck Liddell of the same era. But the divisions that have been around a lot longer and the divisions that have been higher level competitive, it isn't as cut and dried as that anymore. If you shoot an old school double on Allen now, he has dealt with that so aggressively, and working with Preux, he'll deal with it so aggressively that it's no longer an issue of just I will stop your takedown. It is now, when you attempt to take me down, I drive my sternum into the back of your head and take a front headlock position from which I can attack darces, anacondas, go to your back. You get penalized for even trying it, and that discourages. Now, Bektic will not be discouraged because he's so hungry for it. So it becomes a fight. This one becomes a fight of second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth efforts.
Yeah.
And so it's an interesting one.
It is.
It's having fun.
I love that. That's why I love people who can do chain wrestling or grappling. I love the fact that people aren't. If a guy's not one-dimensional, I will be far more appealed to that person because I think that person is beautiful at switching between wrestling and judo. If you can switch those two around, it's so well mixed. Let's go to the next fight then. You got the big boys.
1 second, I'm gonna grab something here.
Of course you can.
This is a magazine that I found at a yard sale.
Mine the front.
Yes, you're on the front. Look, there you are. No, it is from 1986, Inside Kung Fu. And back in 1986, of course, martial arts was being studied. There was all kinds of ninjas and a lot of things that don't work anymore. But there are 2 articles in here that are meaningful even today. And one of them is The Grappling of Jeet Kune Do by Larry Hartzell. And in 1986, he was examining. This whole article is about the importance of, if your guy is a very good striker, you need to grapple him. And if he is bigger and stronger and a better grappler, you need to go outside and kick his legs. These concepts have been around forever. This is 30 years ago, and this article very concisely approaches those same concepts that we're talking about. And to me, as much as we are seeing newer and newer and more exciting things, all we're really seeing is the refining of logic. Logically, If Allen is going to smash my face in, I gotta take him down. I gotta remove all space. And so we see these really amazing fights that are logical in nature. That Bruce Lee and many other people before him for generations understood these principles. But we get to see them with elite athletes with so much detail in how they do it, and that's why a fight like Allen and Bektic is so exciting.
It is, and do you know what, that article? Well, that's it. That makes me think.
Isn't that crazy?
It makes me think how much the knowledge has already been there. It's crazy to think that, maybe what might seem brand new to us or some other people, it's just been there all along, and just dusting it off and reading it and going, that's how we do it. And that's probably, people like Firas Zahabi knows this already, and he probably knew about a lot of these things, and he's just been refining it to mixed martial arts, obviously,
to the rule structure and the different things the trends and how people are attacking things. I mean, I've been researching and studying a lot of these things for the last decade in more and more detail. And it's frustrating because you get to certain places where you discover certain things, and then you just go pick up Bruce Lee's fighting method, and you're like, oh, like there isn't a great deal of new, and anybody, and it isn't rocket science, and it isn't some mystical thing that only a very few of us understand. It's fighting. People, and the goal of a conversation like this and analysis and breakdowns and stuff like that is that 20 years from now, the way that people can watch baseball and understand all of those stats and all of those things, 20 years from now, people will look at fighting and understand these principles. They're very simple. They're real. They're not, there's nothing weird or mystical or magical. When you put your hand here and I put my hand here, this thing happens. And so that once you can take fighting and start to see it that way and find ways to have other people see it that way, they love it more. And that's why we're having this conversation. That's why people like us do jobs like, do things like this, because we're just so obsessively think it's awesome that we want everybody else to see us.
Yeah, it's human physics. It's I love the physics behind the body. It's great how people don't realize how logical such certain movements are. When I help guys, when I'm training with them and I'm doing stuff, and I show them something, they go, "Oh, that's really awesome." I'm like, in my head, I'm thinking, no, it's logical. That's what this is what these fighters are going to learn. It's what these fighters, are learning. Trying to be logical and simplify it to be more devastating and more powerful, and that's what we're getting out of these guys. And the next fight, the heavyweight division, Stefan Struve is stepping in. Now, he's got a new opponent in Daniel Omielańczuk. Okay, now that is a mouthful. I won't say that 10 times fast, but this is a fight where I am so infuriated by Stefan Struve. He is the one ultimate man who can't use his reach. Like, I don't understand how that man has not been further up in the rankings by keeping people away. He has the longest arms and legs you can imagine, but he just doesn't use it. What is this man meant to do?
Well, so this is something I always think about when we're looking at things. The mindset of growth is something that you'll read everywhere you look. If people are trying to accomplish anything, there's two basic default mindsets. One is a fixed mindset. This much, you're this good at something, this is how good of a piano player you are. And the growth mindset is, this is where I'm at now, and if I work on it, I will get better. And if you have that mindset, and if your coaches have it, you will get better. And so I know his coaches, and I know I have footage that my friend Evan Boris, who works with Henry Hooft, I have footage of him training with Stefan, and Stefan can use his job, and he's very good at it. So there becomes an issue of two things. If I see footage of him, and you see him being taught it, and you see him doing it, and you see him doing it well, that is step one. So we know he has accomplished step one. Now, when we watched him not use reach well in the past, did he have step one? Like, had he achieved that or not? We don't know. We don't know. But if we assume he has it now, step two is being able to express it in combat in real time under duress. So now I know from studying him and looking at footage that I would never share, because when a coach shares something, if a coach shares something with me like that for knowledge, it's not meant for that purpose, but I get to study it, which is very nice. And so I know he can do it. I know he's very good at understanding his range. If he goes in and he fights this fight and he can't do it, that means he's capable of doing it in the gym, not in the cage.
Yeah, and he almost turns into a Joe Riggs. He almost turns into like a Joe Riggs in a way.
Yeah, and then we have to study how do we make our fighter better in the moment, because he has the skills to do it, but he can't do it whether it's under duress or under the audience staring at him or with so much on the line or because of the consequences of winning or losing. So then we address that. So I know, so those two steps, 6 months ago, if we studied one of those fights, we don't know which one he had.
Yeah.
Now I know he has one of them. So now the question is, can he do it in the cage? If he can, this guy's a 6 foot tall fighter who, Omielańczuk, is a heavy hitter. He will slow down, and Struve, all heavyweights slow down. But once a guy slows down, it's a little easier to keep him at range. It's a little easier to move your feet. Struve is a growing, evolving fighter. That part I know, and I expect that's what we're going to see. Because you wouldn't be surprised if one of these fights, you're like, oh my God, look at this guy. He kept him at range. He made the guy overly excited to get in. When he got in, he hit him with a knee or an uppercut, or he worked that thing. You wouldn't be surprised to see that in the future. That future could be this fight. If it isn't this fight, then we go back and we keep working on him until it is that fight.
Yeah, and that's the thing. The height difference here is huge, because I've met Daniel and he's about 5'11" at most. To be fair, his head is enormous. I couldn't believe it when I looked back at the picture with him. His head is, I can't even explain how a human skull is designed that way. But the height is going to be huge, because if you're Stefan Struve, like say, one thing is using that jab, but the other thing is Daniel is going to want to throw the classic overhand to hit a big guy. And that left hand is something that Stefan Struve needs to drill. He needs to keep that chin onto the shoulder, pop it down, and simple small movements. Like you say, Daniel will tire quick if he's trying to throw power shots, and that's what Daniel does. He hits and throws heavy. He's not like he's not a pitter patter. He won't break you down and wear you down over the fight. He tries to get you in and get you out as fast as he can. And I think Struve, hopefully Struve is maturing. He's only young as a heavyweight. If you think about it, he's had a lot of fights, but he's not even 30. I think, or you know, he's only young mentally as an adult. I'm hoping that there's a maturity there. Under the Black Zillions, we know how good they are as coaching. I just hope we get to see the Stefan Struve I think we should all be seeing by now.
Yeah, and he's only 28 years old. The one, like when I look at it, with 35 fights, 27 wins, and his genetic abilities, his physical advantages, and when I see footage like I've seen of him, you say to yourself, at 20, it's frightening what he's capable of. He's been knocked out. That concerns you a little bit, but that's part of the life, and that's part of the challenges he's got to face. It's an interesting one. There's one other thing about Omielańczuk, and that is I've commentated with John Ramdeen. We've commentated maybe 10, 15, maybe even 18 or 20 KSW shows.
Oh, yes.
We've been doing them in English. We were doing them just for Fight Network and for our properties, because we have the rights to show them. And there's so realizations about somebody's culture or their race or their sex or any of these things. Often that's not a good thing. I always feel like if you're making about somebody where they come from and it's a compliment, I'm okay with it. You know what I mean? When we say the Mexican fighters are tough, that's a compliment. Nobody means anything. And you know what I mean? And it's the same thing with these Polish guys. And you've never seen people fight like some of these guys, the Eastern European athletes. And I don't think we're talking about race here. I think we're talking about environment. I think we're talking about culture. I think we're talking about upbringing. I think we're talking about economic conditions. I think we're talking about a style of coaching. And these fucking Eastern Europeans, man, they can fight. They're ferocious.
Russia.
To achieve the level that they get to, the way the approach is different. It's a logical approach from a big picture standpoint. We are going to find the best wrestler or kickboxer or boxer or whatever in all of Russia by taking 10,000 of them when they're 10 years old. And we're gonna push them like crazy. And by the time some of them are injured, some of them are quit, some of them aren't good enough, now we're left with 3,000 at 12. And then we're left with 1,000 at 16. And then they fight each other, and the environment weeds it out. And by the time you get to the top 3 or 4 or 5, you have motherfuckers. Like, you have a level of athlete that has been developed, and there's a mental strength to these guys. And a lot of the Polish fighters that we have called, we've seen that. And so you Stefan Struve or anyone else, that's something just fundamentally a part of a guy like Daniel Omielańczuk that you have to deal with. And those fights are always interesting. Yeah,
they are. His last one, a fight against Dano, that was an absolute brawl. A pair of them literally knocked 10 years out of each other. It was a great fight. Next up we have is a light heavyweight bout, which I think it's a really poignant fight for both fighters. You've got OSP coming over from the States to fight Jimi Manuwa. And the reason why I say it's a poignant fight is because the pair of them, the only time they're really losing is against guys who are in that upper echelon. The pair of them just keep falling. They just both fell short to those upper guys. You've got Jimi Manuwa, who trains with Gus up in All-Star Gym up in Sweden. OSP, I don't know if he needs to go to another gym as such, but I'm just thinking, what is OSP slightly missing? Obviously, take away the GSP fight. The Jon Jones fight. That's a short notice bout. He did fantastic. He broke his forearm, I believe it was. Either way, OSP is he's an athletic, really exciting, powerful striker, but I like him a lot. But then Jimi Manuwa, that dude hits hard, and he showed in that Jan Blachowicz fight after being out for a while. He showed actually quite surprisingly good bit of grappling, which I think is a credit to what he's been doing up in Sweden.
Yeah, I mean, you're really right to point out kind of how both of them are kind of at that point where we've had you both up near the top, and you haven't quite done it. So the way to get there again is only one of you are kind of moving that way out of this. Now, that should be irrelevant in the fight. It's supposed to be irrelevant. When you arrive at the moment that the fight is beginning, we're supposed to just be dealing with this body type and a collection of skills and my desire to be the best, have the best performance, me the athlete, or him the athlete, have the best performance you could possibly have in that moment. That's what we're supposed to be. But the truth is, all of those other things can affect you. I mean, when you're thinking about the difference in this fight, your OSP, you went and you fought Jon Jones, and you fought at the highest level, and you went the distance. We'd like to go there again. When you lose a fight like that, you say, maybe I can beat the Anthony Johnsons of the world next time. Maybe I can beat Daniel Cormier. I'm right there. I felt it, and I feel I'm right there. So you beat Jimi Manuwa, we go back there. We work. You lose, you get knocked out, you wake up, and you're on a 2-fight losing streak, and you're going that way. None of this can be in your mind when you're fighting Jimi Manuwa, or you wake up. When you hear yourself say what happened, the answer is something bad. You know what I mean? And so you have to be free of all of that kind of stuff. And there's some real similarities to the Struve fight. OSP, what did he learn about by fighting Jon Jones? He would have learned how incredibly powerful that sort of force field on the outside range, where there's this hot zone, where if I go in, my face gets hurt, and I do nothing to him. And eventually, if I get beat up enough, my brain tries to protect me, and it forces me to hesitate passing that hot zone. Your brain starts going, oh, man. You're like, oh, you watch it back. You're like, why didn't I go for it in the last couple of rounds? Well, your opponent has trained your brain when it reaches that point. So he learned that, and he's a guy with a long reach. He's a guy with attribute gifts. So from learning that, that's what he's got to want. That's what he's got to want to do against Manuwa. And Manuwa, the other hand, lift the punch and come over top, or come underneath, draw out fire and move. He understands that. Both guys know exactly what their assignment is, and we know it, and they know it, and they know that they know it. So all we do is watch two guys go out and try to make their thing happen against an unwilling dance partner, and that's why these fights are so great. There shouldn't be a great deal of surprises in here. The guy who can bring a surprise to the party, that's great. You know, if you've got some access to the back that he hasn't studied on you, fantastic stuff. But in most likely cases here, you know what he's trying, he knows what you're trying, and you just got to go do it.
Yeah, and I like the matchup. I think it's a nice matchup to make, because the light heavyweight division, some matches are hard to make because of where everyone is and who everyone's fought. I like this fight that's going to happen. I think the pair of them, obviously, ideally, they both need to win big, but I think it'll help the pair of them know where they're standing really in relation to that kind of that ranking sort of top 10. Let's go to the co-main event. And I see this as a fight that, again, it's not necessarily about what's going on inside. It can actually have an effect what's going on outside. Vitor Belfort, he's not been the same guy since he stopped taking the TRT. But the thing is, he said his body's slowly getting back to normal. His testosterone levels are getting back up there, but age kicks in as well as a huge factor. With Gegard Mousasi, that dude has got so much potential. I wish he would go to a top-level camp and train with some of the top-level guys. He sticks himself in Europe and he doesn't move around enough. But he's a guy who's hot and cold. If Belfort's hot and then Gegard's cold, you can just see it fall. Gegard, he got that win at UFC 200 against Thiago Santos, where some reason Santos, when he went to get back up, posted on both hands rather than have one hand. I don't know why he did it. He just wasn't thinking at the moment. But either way, it's a really poignant fight for Gegard Mousasi. It could be a coming out party. It could be like, look, I'm here. I've got a consistency, and I know I can be one of the best. And I can be a world beater. For Belfort to stay relevant, he really needs to get a win. Belfort's beat the two guys who are fighting on the main event.
It's true. There's a lot of things at play in this one, and it's interesting. Mousasi is only 31 years old, and the dude has 45 fights in mixed martial arts. In kickboxing, he's got to have another 30. And it could be way more than that. And calm and able to just process things. You see, the feeling that you get when he's talking. I mean, lately he's tried to be funnier and he's worn flashy shirts. But the feeling you get of, he's just kind of going through like, he's laid back. He seems to move slower. He like that too. That's a really powerful thing. Tour fights, and if somebody is somebody bets on fighting, which to me is crazy, but if somebody does, this is one of those ones where you hedge, and it's Vitor by knockout in round 1, or because, and the 2.5 minute mark, the more it favors Mousasi. He knows it, and Vitor knows it. It's the same kind of thing. It's like it's a really interesting thing. You start to think about. When you go and you analyze fights, and like I was saying earlier, a lot of this is what's happening. And people weren't bothering to look at it for a lot of years. People just talked about the same kinds of things. They talked about the rankings and who are you calling out next and who's up next for title shot. That became the dialogue. And if you want to change that paradigm, you get people studying fighting, you get them watching it. It isn't some bizarre, mystical, confusing thing any more than baseball or football or soccer is. Soccer is a very complex game to my understanding, and but now people understand it, and fighting is the same way. And once we get to that point, you realize anything we can look at. People say, "Oh man, the way to beat fighter X is with leg kicks." Well, I mean, if you know that, you don't think fighter X knows that you know that, and you don't think he knows that his opponent's plan is that. I mean, and his coach knows that his opponent's plan is that. So once this self-awareness starts to go through, and it really is deep now, the last 2-3 years in particular, and it's still getting deeper, there is a absolute 100% certainty that Gegard and all of his coaches and everybody around him is like, we need to be moving our feet. We need to be never moving straight back. We need to be paying close attention to our defensive systems for the first 3 minutes. We don't even have to touch this guy unless it's with a jab, and if it is a jab, it's coming directly back. They know that. Everybody knows that, and Vitor knows they know that. So if you're Vitor, what do you do? And it can be a very simple question. I know that I've got to knock him out, and it's going to be even harder because he's trying to stop me. So do I try harder? Or do I slow down and try to make this a longer fight? I haven't won a longer fight in many years. I haven't, you know what I mean? This is a question of, do you stick with what you're good at and push it as hard as you can? If you push that hard at the 3 minute mark, you're going to be exhausted because the human body doesn't allow that much aggression. It's, you're using the anaerobic system. It's called the glycolytic system. You're burning sugars to make ATP, and the result is hydrogen in your muscles, which raises the acidity, and physiologically you just can't do it. It's not like watching Nick Diaz, and the aerobic system, the oxidative system. He's using that logically, higher intensity lower intensity, higher duration. With Vitor, it's like high intensity, and it's inversely proportional to the duration. It's only so long he can do it. So do you push it as hard as possible? And if you can't get him out of there in 3 minutes, you know you're fucked. You bring it back, train your system different, train your approach different. You could try that, but you're 39 years old and you haven't won a fight that way in a long time. So if you're Vitor people, what do you do? What do you do?
It's tough, and he hasn't went more than one round since last time he did that was when he beat Bisping, and he went to round 2. So and that's a long time. So that's a while back. If you think, I think he can't. In my opinion, I think he can't change something that's been done for so long. I think he's just got to go in and do what he did. Like try to do what he did with Weidman. Just go in and just blitz. Do that blitz storm and hope it pays off.
Now, my belief is you can change what you are. But often, so you know when you've seen people climb Mount Everest or any of these big mountains, when they climb a mountain, let's take my Joe Rogan mug. When they climb a mountain, they don't go like this. They go around, down, and they have to go back around, and they go up, and they're almost there, and they have to take another path that goes way backwards and go back down. That's how Vitor could become a different fighter. He would need to be, because he's going to give up the things that work a lot of the time in giving up that over-aggressive blitz and giving up that anaerobic burn as far and as hot as he can until it's gone. We got to take that away, and that's how you win. So we got to go down the mountain a little bit. And now the question is, I'm 39 years old. Do I believe, and I've had hormonal issues that create issues with the new testing thing. Is it possible for me to go at 43, I'm going to be a new kind of fighter and possibly get worse before I get better? Maybe not. And if not, fuck it. Let's just blitz this guy with everything we have. And I think that's where we are.
Yeah. It takes, I think it'll take time for him to change. And I don't think he needs to take time away from fighting, maybe like a 12-month break to maybe come back and if he can be different. Also, I believe that as you all get older, your fast twitch muscle fibers, your slow twitch muscle fibers improve. That's why a lot of Tour de France champions are in their they're in their 30s and they're older rather than you get the sprinters who are younger, I believe as well. So that's something that he should maybe take into consideration. He's not that 19-year-old kid who we came and saw and we're all blitzed by. But the main event, I don't want to take anything away from what you've done with your breakdown. Let's try and talk about as much as we can without taking all the nuggets that you've come up with your breakdown. Michael Bisping, Dan Henderson. Look, we know the fight's happening for a reason, and we know why. It's a revenge fight, and I get that. One thing that surprised me with Dan Henderson in his fight against Hector Lombard was the amount of kicks he threw and the fact that he caught Hector Lombard with that head kick because he kept throwing leg kicks often, and eventually he dropped that left hand, and that's what landed that head kick. Now, is that because Henderson's realizing he can't just throw his right hand and rely on that to land? But the other problem was Hector Lombard was static in the second round, as opposed to if you've got a moving fighter, that's what is Dan Henderson's kind of weakness. I think that's what I think with Bisping. He's going to move around. He's not going to be circling to the power hand like he did at UFC 100 as well.
I'm not super worried about the circling to the power hand. I mean, it's Dan Henderson, so there's always a worry. But you can't just circle only to your right, to his left.
No.
You can't. You have to move that way. I mean, the fighters need to move both ways. So when people are like, oh my God, he circles to the power hand. But yeah, you gotta move both ways. Yeah. Also, if you train it properly, go back and watch. And he did it again, drilled Stipe with that left hand. And Overeem against Arlovsky moved to his own left into Arlovsky's power all night long. And Overeem against JDS, the knockout happens moving into JDS's power. A good fighter knows. So a lot of times we will hear these things. People will say, oh, well, against the southpaw, you've got to have lead foot dominance to make sure your front foot is outside of his front foot. That's not true at all. That is what they teach you when you're a very low-level novice to keep you safe against another novice. This will be a little game that we can play, and if we're winning this game, we'll kind of be winning the fight. Against a high-level guy, if you do that all night, he's got to answer, oh, okay, he's just doing this old school, very simple novice approach, and he'll deal with you in any of 20 ways. When Overeem, the beauty of what he had been doing, and he did drop Stipe with it, is he literally was offering his head out to your power side all night long. Now, there's a couple reasons he's doing it. One is he's got some plans for you because he knows what you're throwing. He says, go ahead and throw your right hand. First thought, if you're a good fighter, is like, Overeem isn't putting his head there by accident. He's asking for my right hand. If I throw it, what's he going to do to me? And you see Arlovsky, he froze him. He was like, shit, I don't want to do that. What you also see, very heavyweight, you saw him, it's left hand and left kick, and you don't fucking know which one it is, and he's showing both all the time. That's what Hendo's been doing with his right kick. Also, Roy Nelson, overhand right, knocks out everybody. Then the next time, was it Struve? I can't remember. All of a sudden, it's uppercut. Same mechanic. He would sell the shoulder exactly the same way, and it was just one variation. It was like, I can knock everybody out with my overhand right. Oh wait, okay, they're all predicting it. Wait, if every time I throw an overhand right, guys are going like this, I'm gonna hit one of them with an uppercut. So we just created more options based around your reaction, and that's why Hendo's throwing his right kick so much. Everybody's fucking scared of his right kick, and he's like, well, I also have a left, so it doesn't hurt guys as much. I'll kick him in the head or the leg or the body.
Yeah.
So it just gives them a tool. So if you are going to, no problem. If you are going to be so done, maybe his right kick will be available. So he's added that as a tool. I also like against Tim Boetsch, he threw it retreating. And we see it a lot now. People will point it out, but it's been going on the last number of years. Almost all the good champs and the good fighters can plant that back foot while retreating and knock guys out moving in. Stipe beat Verdum that way. There's a million examples. You see it every week now. It almost has to be treated as just an aspect that they can all do. But Dan did that to Boetsch, and he did it really well. And against Hector and it's Shogun, they were both, and it's in my breakdown, you'll see it. There were both things where he just found that weird space in between where the things that guys are used to doing and guys are used to having their opponents do in the training room, nobody elbows you in the temple in that little open space. Nobody pushes your back and hits you like he did with Shogun. So he's just finding spaces in little openings in space and time to knock guys out.
Yeah, he's using. He knows what his age is. He knows what his body can do. He's basically being as wise and as knowledgeable and picking every shot he can, rather than wasting energy and wasting shots. And he's doing it. He's doing it well enough. And Bisping, I think he's come on leaps and bounds recently with his boxing, with his footwork, with his combinations because of his new boxing coach that he's got in place now. It's almost like if I wish the pair of them were together earlier, we would have seen a different Michael Bisping maybe a few years back. But I'm looking forward to seeing how Bisping approaches this fight. I hope he doesn't go in there with that mindset, I'm going to knock you out. I hope he uses the simple mindset of, I'm going to do what I do, but the knockout will come if it comes. That's the big thing.
I agree, and if Mike does that, he should be a pretty big favorite in this. He's always underestimated. People always underappreciate how good he is until they get in and fight him. The worst performance of his career is the fight with Dan Henderson, not just because he got knocked out, but he was super jumpy and hesitant, and he doesn't look like himself at all in that fight. Yeah. Play any mind games with himself, and it's something he addresses. He has a psychological coach. He should be fine. But it's not just the knockout. Go watch that fight. He had a terrible fight.
It wasn't, that's why I talked about the circling bit. When you watch that fight, all he did was circle that way the whole time. From about maybe 4.5 minutes into the first round, he just circled all the way to the power right. And I said to my friend at the time, I said, he needs to stop doing that. He needs to switch it. You know, you can still do, like he said, you can circle it, but switch it back. He just kept going the one way. And that's what led to it. And I thought, if he just went left and right and switched it, it could have been a slightly different fight. But either way, look, like I said, Robin, I am going to post your I'm going to push the breakdown anyway on our Facebook page. I'll put it onto our Twitter wall, but I don't want to go any more into this because I know you've put the hours and hours into it. Look, Robin, you're a legend, a gentleman. I absolutely adore the work you're doing. Keep up. I listen to your commentary on Fight Pass when you're on there. I listen to your stuff on Fight Network. So how do people jump online to join you and the work that you're doing?
Definitely people should subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's The Fight Network on YouTube. And then on Twitter, it's Robin Black MMA. And I use Snapchat a lot all of a sudden because it's kind of fun. It's 12 seconds. And if you put a dick pic up, it'll be gone in 24 hours. I haven't done that yet. I'm going to make sure I don't. But I'm going to fight. This is my last.
Robert, you've got to get onto Brad Pickett. You've got to get onto Brad Pickett's. You've got to get onto Brad Pickett's Snapchat. Because him and Will Brooks had a bet on where he made Will Brooks lose and he has to do 100 press-ups, but he makes him do 5 at a time. It's great. It's great fun. He just makes him do it randomly.
I will. I love Brad Pickett, man. I love Brad Pickett. I'm going on vacation today, so I'll be away for a week. I think it's coming out in a few days, and I'll probably tweet a little bit and do Snapchat from Vegas for my vacation.
Nice, dude. I will be posting it. I'll be watching it. Honestly, thank you so much for your time, Robin. It's been an absolute pleasure and a joy as always. You're an absolute star. Thank you so much, my friend.
You're welcome, brother. The pleasure was mine. Enjoy the hostilities, my friend.